Hello everyone, and welcome to my review of Justice League. But before we get started, I just want to put out this little disclaimer here. See, how I work things on this channel is that I record my reviews several weeks in advance, and then I work on them, edit them, and then upload them to YouTube and schedule them out. I'm a one-man operation here, damn it, give me a break. And due to the COVID situation, I was actually able to get a couple of weeks ahead. But of course, when you plan ahead and you're responsible and things like that, sometimes things come out from underneath you, sometimes with really big announcements like this one. Just a couple hours ago, it was announced on Zack Snyder's Vero watch party of Man of Steel that Warner Brothers is going to be releasing the Snyder Cut version of Justice League on HBOMax in 2021, which basically makes my review of this movie for Justice League null and void, because apparently that movie is almost completely different from the version that I reviewed here. Now, I am reviewing this as a recommendation, so I am fulfilling my obligations to that viewer. I just wanted to let everyone know when you click on this video and you watch my review, I know this is the theatrical version. We are going to be getting the Snyder Cut version. You'll hear me talk about how I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, maybe 30 years down the line, things like that. It makes me sound pretty stupid at this point, but when you listen to that, just kind of ignore it and just go along and just keep watching the video, please. I will say, though, before we get started, that I'm extremely happy over this news, as the majority of everyone is. I liked this version of Justice League that we had. I thought it was enjoyable, but it's definitely not the version and the vision that Zack Snyder had for the DCEU and the Justice League. So after all the crap and situations that he went through and Warner Brothers went through, we are finally getting the original version that everyone was clamoring for. Is everyone going to like that version? Well, that's remain to be determined, because judging on reactions from Man of Steel and Batman v Superman, I mean, I would think that this Zack Snyder cut version of Justice League is going to be divisive at best. So that's the question, really. Is this going to be just an amazing version of the story that we're eventually going to clamor for Justice League 2 and 3 that were originally scheduled? Or is this going to fit more into the divisive nature of the original DCEU that Zack Snyder was giving us with Man of Steel and Batman v Superman? So again, I'm happy for Zack Snyder. I'm happy for all the fans out there who had supported the movement of hashtag release the Snyder Cut and all the money that they've raised for charities and suicide prevention and things like that. It's great. It's a great victory for you. I just hope that we all temper our expectations a little bit, because we've built this thing up for so many years, building up to be this mythical legend of a film. What happens when it's the type of movie that, what we've been getting so far? I'm super excited for it. I will be watching it next year, whether it's a TV series or it's a feature-length film released on HBOMax. I don't care. I will be watching it. I will be buying it on Blu-ray, 4K, however it comes out. If it's released in physical media, it'll definitely be coming home. I'm super excited. But until then, here is my review of the theatrical version of Justice League. I had a lot of fun doing it. I was little innovative in my introduction, so let's finally get to it. Thank you everyone for clicking on this, and if you like what you saw, please subscribe. Thank you, and take care. As many of you know, I am contractually obligated by YouTube to maintain my beard at all times while I have this channel. However, for this review, I felt that I really needed to capture the Superman aspect. And the only way I can do that is to really shave this beard off and try to get that Supermanish chin as best as possible. So I've hired state-of-the-art visual effects artists to impose Henry Cavill, our Superman's jaw, onto mine, so that you won't even notice that I still have a beard. Please do so now, artists. Beautiful. Now I just need to not move my head this entire review. Shit. Justice League, released in 2017 and is directed by Joss Whedon, who's behind such films like Batman v Superman, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, the TV series, Dawn of the Dead, Man of Steel, and The Avengers. And this film is starring Ben Affleck, Gal Gadot, Jason Momoa, Ray Fisher, and Ezra Miller. And regardless of what the advertisement would have had you believe, it's also starring Henry Cavill. Okay, artists, can we take the superimposed chin off, because this is just not working. Can we get rid of that, please? Thank you. the beard is staying, and I look so much better with it. After the events of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, the death of Superman has left Earth vulnerable to outside worldly attacks. In comes the villainous Steppenwolf, who is the uncle of the big DC baddie Darkseid. He has come to capture the 3 mother boxes left here centuries ago, in order to mold this planet into his homeworld of Apocalypse. But this arrival sparks the attention of Bruce Wayne and Diana Prince, who agree to band together a team of extraordinary metahumans to stop the evil Steppenwolf and to end his very brief reign of terror. And if you want a movie that has just everything, anything that you can think of, go wrong during production, post-production, and after its release, gosh, it's this movie. This poor film called Justice League. Now, to give me some credibility here with my review, well, I don't need to give myself credibility. Movies are for everyone. Everyone has their own credibility when it comes to watching movies, but I know that there are going to be some fanboys out there that are not going to like what I have to say about this. So, to preface that, I'm a DC guy. I love all comics. I love Marvel. I love DC. I love independent comics. I love it all. But if I have to choose, I'm always going to say DC is my favorite, and the characters that they have are my favorite. So to say that I was excited for Justice League was an understatement. And I hope all of you know my feelings on the DCU and my love for the DCU. If any of you have watched my 200th movie review on this channel, which was on Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, you know that I loved that movie, and I love Zack Snyder's vision of this universe. I haven't reviewed Man of Steel yet, but I will tell you now, I think it's a masterpiece. So to say that I had high hopes for Justice League, again, is an understatement. I was looking for, it was my most anticipated movie of the year. Well, I'd take that back, actually. I would put Wonder Woman just above Justice League, because Wonder Woman was a movie that I've been wanting for so many years. And it came out, this one came out in June, and this film came out in November, so just a few months before this film came out, we got our own solo Wonder Woman movie, which all of you know by now that I love to pieces. It's in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. But then the beginning of 2017 happened, and gosh, every single day felt like there was a news story that came out talking about troubled production, talking about a director firing, talking about cast members being unhappy and wanting out of their roles. All of that still not deterring me from my excitement of Justice League. I will be upfront and honest right now. I actually really like this movie. I don't think it's as good as Batman v Superman or Man of Steel or Wonder Woman. I still think, though, it is a very enjoyable time. Does the film have some problems? Yes, but I think a lot of the negative comments that this film get are not based on what we actually got in the movie. It's based on the outside of the film world, and outside of the post-production and the pre-production, and all of the switcheroos with the director. Joss Whedon did come in about 5 or 6 months before this film was released to do a lot of reshoots and to do a lot of fixing for the studio Warner Brothers, because Zack Snyder unfortunately had lost his daughter due to suicide. Or at least that was the reasoning that was given to us at the time. Let me say right off the bat, though, that anyone that has to go through their child committing suicide, yeah, I would put my entire world on hold too. That is a terrible thing that shouldn't happen to anyone. And this film and the whole hashtag release the Snyder Cut has raised so much money for suicide prevention and mental illness and depression, a bunch of those charities. So the aftermath of this film and all of the negativity that goes around it, it has sparked some great charitable, beautiful things. But then we come to find out that the loss of his daughter was kind of like okay, why don't you just kind of, get out the door, because that's kind of what we were wanting to begin with. As for those of you that don't remember, Batman v Superman came out in March of 2016. This film came out in November of 2017, and production started like 2 weeks after the release of Batman v Superman, like the beginning of April of 2016. And you got all the negative backlash of Batman v Superman, but because production schedules were so intertwined and so interlinked and so put close together, they weren't firing Zack Snyder then. So it was actually very smart on Snyder's part to to kind of schedule it, or at least to maneuver his way in there to schedule Justice League production so close to the opening of Batman v Superman. And I feel like I'm falling into the void that everyone falls into. We talk about everything that happened around the movie, that we don't talk about the actual movie that we got. So I'm going to put a pause on that. Let's talk about the actual film that we got of Justice League. Like I said, I enjoy this movie a lot. I think the pacing is really great. I know that the studio was like, hey, we need to keep this 2 hours or less. No more. No more Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, 2.5, 3-hour flicks. We want something clean and concise that we can put out there and get a lot of people, a lot of showings at movie theaters. And I think what we get of the team itself, in particular with Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Cyborg, and Flash, I think is great. I want so much more of this team that sadly we're never gonna see again. In particular, the standout is Ray Fisher as Cyborg. He is the heart of this movie, the core of this movie, and his performance, I think, is the least amount that was changed when we had our change of directors. He's this former human being that is now born of this mother box and now is a cyborg. He doesn't sleep, and he's constantly processing and constantly connected to everything in the world. That is such a fascinating character and a fascinating concept. I liked what we got here, but I also wanted so much more. Gal Gadot returns here as Wonder Woman, and she is, no pun intended, but wonderful already. We all know this. She's great in this role. Can't wait for Wonder Woman 84 come out later this year, if it does, if movie theaters actually exist anymore at the end of this year. If there was one character that I didn't love here, it was Ezra Miller's Flash, because I think he was trying way too hard as the Flash. He'd already had Grant Gustin as the Flash on TV, so he was trying to do something very different with it, and I appreciate his choices. He was making himself not very relatable to the human species, and he's constantly thinking on a wavelength that other people just aren't. But I also think that he was trying way too hard to be the funny guy of the team. It doesn't feel like it's happening naturally for you. And spoiler alert right now, I enjoyed when Superman came back. Henry Cavill has probably been on the butt end of all of these DC films that have been crapped on by critics and by fans. He is he's a really good actor. He is very charming, and I think he is a fantastic Superman. He just keeps getting put into these movies that are either divisive, controversial, or people just claim to be downright terrible. Which sucks, because when he comes back, he is a total badass, and that's all that I've wanted from a Superman recently. And they didn't show him in any of the advertising leading up to this movie's release, which I think was really cool. I think it was a really interesting take. Yes, we are committing to this idea that Superman, he is dead, and he's not coming back. What was also frustrating is that everyone, podcasts, YouTube channels, also thought the same thing. But they all conveniently changed their tune after this movie came out. Should have been advertising Superman. Whatever. You can't please everyone. But I had this inner hope that, gosh, if we're bringing Superman back to take on all of this, if we're saving him, he better come back as a 100% badass. And that's exactly what they do. He wipes the floor with Steppenwolf and all of these parademons. He's a total badass with a poorly CGI'd chin. For those of you that don't know what I'm talking about, around the reshoot time that Joss Whedon came in and was fixing, or at least changing everything, Henry Cavill was off shooting Mission Impossible 6, and he was contractually obligated to have a mustache for that movie. But when he came back to do the reshoots, Paramount was bullying Warner Brothers and saying, no, you can't shave our lead actor's mustache, he's contractually obligated. Which is such a dick move, because it's so much easier and probably a lot cheaper for Paramount to CGI a mustache onto a lip, as opposed to Warner Brothers trying to remove CGI and facial hair from an entire jawline. I remember reading interviews and things from the director saying, hey, I would have done it, it was the studio who wouldn't allow it. So we ended up getting an Uncanny Valley Superman part of the time in this movie. Which I'll be upfront right now, it doesn't bother me really at all. All of these screenshots and GIFs that you see online, Twitter, social media, yes, it looks bad when you freeze frame it, but in continuity and with the film going on, I don't think it's that bad and not as noticeable as people make it out to be. I don't know, maybe I'm just glossy-eyeing it. But I don't care. It doesn't bother me. The dialogue that we have here, the pacing of the movie, I think is actually very similar to what we got with the first Avengers film. Each scene kind of has that transitional final line that leads into the next scene. Again, I think that's probably what the influence was, getting Joss Whedon in there to reshoot everything and to kind of compile and glue everything together. If anything, the main problem of this movie, at least watching it, is the villain, Steppenwolf. And once they announced that he was going to be the villain of the movie, which it was announced when Zack Snyder was directing it, I knew it was going to be doomed from the start. Who knew who Steppenwolf was? No one. I didn't even know who Steppenwolf was. I may have seen him in the Superman the Animated Series, but I didn't put two and two together. So you get a villain that no one knows and no one cares about and no one relates to. You know, what's this team fighting? And we have more mindless drones with the parademons, kind of like the Chitauri in the Avengers. And I think people were just tired of seeing that. They wanted more when it came to their villains and their villain armies. Which makes me believe that if this film came out like 5-7 years before this in 2017, probably would have done very well. I think this film is a lot of fun. Again, I love this team. Ben Affleck returning as Batman, of course, is great. I think he's one of the best Batmans that we had, but you can tell that he is not 100% there, and he is not 100% invested into this character anymore. All thanks to the fan reaction of Batman v Superman. I think this movie is enjoyable, and it's not as terrible as people make it out to be. Is it lacking heart and lacking a sense of love and community? Yeah, that's probably the biggest negative I could say about this movie. There is a sense of love and hope that is missing, that I feel that we had in Man of Steel and in Batman v Superman and in Wonder Woman. This movie was just kind of there to move things along and to build to this climax that all these previous movies were building to. And the end product that we should have gotten, I think, should have been a lot more grand and a lot more epic than what we got. It just felt eh. Again, really all due to the knowledge that everyone really had on the production of this movie. So I'm going to stop talking about the movie itself. I did enjoy it, but I think the production of this movie and the aftermath of its release does need some reviewing of its own. So Man of Steel was divisive at best, and then when Batman v Superman came out, it was critically and audience-ly panned by everyone. A majority of people did not like that movie. So when that happens to a studio and to a franchise that you're trying to build, typically you want to go into a different direction, and you probably start seeking out new directors and new people to carry out that new vision. But the production for Justice League began 2 weeks after the release of Batman v Superman, which was really smart on Zack Snyder's side. So I think there was a part of him that knew that, yeah, not everyone's gonna like Batman v Superman, but if we start Justice League right after that, then I'm probably gonna be safe with my job. Which he was. They kept him on, and they went through the entire principal photography. Up until March of the next year, 2017, when Zack Snyder's daughter unfortunately ended her life due to suicide. Which is awful. That shouldn't happen to anyone, and I don't wish that upon anyone, my worst enemy. That's completely terrible. But I think Warner Brothers saw this as the out that they wanted with Zack Snyder, so they graciously offered for him to step aside and brought in Joss Whedon, who is the director of the original Avengers, a movie that was critically and audience-ly loved by everyone. And he wrote a lot more dialogue and shot a lot more scenes that tied and glued things together into the short, quippy, and heartless version of this movie that what we got. We got this strange Russian family that's there for some reason, and apparently parademons have a problem with doors. They can't open the door to get this family. I don't know. But I understand the reasoning as to why Warner Brothers wanted Zack Snyder gone, because they gave him a lot of budget and a lot of leeway to make these two other films that weren't doing critically well and audience well either. Batman v Superman, that should make $1 billion. That should be guaranteed $1 billion territory. And it made, I think, 800 million? That's still good, but definitely not the amount that Batman v Superman should be doing. So after Justice League comes out, we have these rumors and this legend of this epic 3-hour version of Justice League. That's the Snyder Cut. That's the original version and the original vision that he had for this movie. And we get this clamoring from this fan base, this hashtag, release the Snyder Cut, wanting Warner Brothers, release this! We deserve it! You owe us this version! No, they don't. This property is theirs. It belongs to them. This movie that they paid for belongs to them. They have every right to say, no, we're not going to release the Snyder Cut. No, we're not going to release this version of Justice League. And so all of those fanboys who are behind the release of the Snyder Cut, again, this hashtag, this community, it does great things. It has raised a lot of money for great charities, suicide prevention, mental illness. They do fantastic things. But there's also there's a toxicity to that fandom of release the Snyder Cut. There's a sense of entitlement to it as well of, well, we're the fans. We deserve this better version. Give us that better version because I'm a fan and I deserve it. I'm entitled to it. And it's this idea that it's all the studio's fault and all Joss Whedon's fault. And yes, sure, a lot of the blame could be placed on their shoulders, but I think just as equally, it should be placed on the fans' shoulders as well. All these people for release the Snyder Cut, where were you when Man of Steel came out and it was a divisive film? Where were you when we get Zack Snyder's version of Batman v Superman? Because you weren't there when that film came out. I know. I lived through it. I loved Batman v Superman, and I told everyone that I could at that time. No one was backing him then. So now all of a sudden you get this version of Justice League that you didn't like, and now all of a sudden Zack Snyder is the greatest gift to the DC universe, and we need his vision. You don't deserve it. We don't deserve the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. Now, when Warner Brothers decides to release it, and they will, whether it's next year, whether it's 10 years, 30 years from now, we are going to get the Zack Snyder cut version of Justice League. And when we do, I will be there opening day. I will purchase it. I will watch it like crazy. But this sense of entitlement that we deserve this version of Justice League. No, you don't. You don't deserve it. We don't deserve that version because we didn't back Zack Snyder then when he was giving us the initial core of his version and of his vision for the Justice League and the DCEU. Why should we deserve it and get it now? Which is an absolute shame because it was going to lead to some pretty epic movies from what we've heard over the past several months. Justice League was going to set up the team Justice League, and then Justice League 2 was going to introduce Darkseid, and Superman was going to succumb to the anti-life equation, and Apocalypse was going to take over, and it was going to be just a desolate, terrible, evil ending. And then Justice League 3 was going to be Mad Max. It was going to be that nightmare sequence that we got from BVS. And Batman was going to have cyborgs and the Flash back. And that's what that little tease was in Batman v Superman. And they were going to change everything and make everything great and epic and Justice League-y again. It just sounds so cool. And apparently Martian Manhunter was always here. The actor Lennox, who plays the general for Man of Steel, he was Martian Manhunter the entire time, apparently. Green Lantern was supposed to show up and be like, oh, something's coming at the end. So I feel like I'm pissing off a lot of people with my opinions on this movie and on the hashtag and on the production of this, but I don't care. That's my honest opinion. I actually really enjoyed this version that we got. Yes, I feel that the core heart of the movie, the love that the movie should have and the hope that it should promote, it's not there, but I still have a really good time every single time I watch it. I'm going to give Justice League 3.5 out of 5 Blu-rays.
I am above average.
Alright everyone, now comes my favorite part of my videos where I pick which movie I'm going to be watching next. Next one comes as a recommendation from one of my longtime subscribers and longtime friends on Facebook, Paul Morgan. You recommended The Defiant Ones. A film about a couple of prisoners tied together by a chain escaping, and tensions between blacks and whites. That's my cup of tea. I've never seen it before, but apparently it's your favorite movie of all time, so thank you very much, Paul, for the recommendation. If any of you have recommendations of films that you want me to review on here, leave your comment below this video, or go to my Facebook page, my Instagram, or my Twitter, and leave your recommendation there. And if I have access to it, I will watch, review it, and give you a shout on the channel. So guys, what did you think of Justice League? Or if you've never seen it before and you stumbled across it because of this video, then comment below and let me know what you thought about it. And as always, if you like what you saw here, if you like my take on movies, then hit the subscribe subscribe button and hit that bell so you know the next time I release my next movie review. So guys, I will see you next time with my review of The Defiant Ones. So in the meantime, be well, be good to each other, and go watch a movie. Take care, guys.